hey, this is it's mental podcast. It's the first episode after New Year. Ooh, today we are interviewing Tera. It's our first time to meet after a while because she escaped the reality for a while. Okay, I let her talk.
I escaped. I basically took a full month off of comedy, and I was mostly in my flat and spending a few moments with friends. And speaking of mental health, it was one of the lowest times of mental health in the past year, honestly.
And but first, who are you?
Oh yeah, good question. So my name is Tera. Last name is Kilbride. It is Irish. It is Gaelic. And I'm a comedian in the Berlin comedy scene. I produce 4 shows a month on average. The shows are called Hot and Bothered, Comedy Burlesque, Glow, and This Could Get Awkward. You can also find me performing around town, 3 to 6 shows a week on other people's stages.
And where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Grand Forks, North Dakota, which is a very rural state near Canada. But for the past 15 years prior to moving to Berlin, I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oh, cool. So very cold place.
Very fucking cold place, yeah. Oops, can I say fuck on this podcast? Probably.
Yeah. You can fuck on this
we can fuck on this podcast
if you want.
Yeah,
if you can find a person to fuck with you.
I'm definitely coming back, yeah. No.
So why you escaped last month?
Honestly, I got really worried about when they announced the new variant. I think when you have anxiety, one of the ways you try to control it is by constantly monitoring the situation. So as much as I would hate to admit this to people who would probably poo-poo this, I was keeping a real close tabs on Corona. And when they announced the new variant, I just got really scared that I would get a bunch of people sick on my show. And we had a few people cancel, or a few people test positive the show right before this. So I kind of got into a panic, and I was going to finish out my last few shows. And I wish I had, but I just said, you know what, I'm taking a month off, and just did it that way. And then, of course, when I found out that the variant, not that it's mild, because it's not mild in all cases, but when I found out that most people that were boosted were doing fine, I was kind of like, fuck it. After a month of mental health and isolation, I was like, let's get back into comedy and do this. So it's kind of good, actually, because I came back with a fierceness and a real hunger for performing and for hosting and producing. But yeah, it was a long, fucking weird, lonely month. I tried online dating during that time because I was like, well, I never have time. I'm on stage 5 or 6 nights a week, so I might as well try this. I can't bitch about being single if I'm not even trying. But yeah, I only ended up meeting one person in person, and it was a very weird experience. I have a new bit about it. It was a German guy, and he told me in a past life he was a Native American, and that's kind of all I needed to hear. I was like, all right, but he said something interesting. This guy, he was an actor, which I didn't know when I went out with him. Otherwise, probably
You would have said
would have canceled. I know, it was the first thing I texted a friend. I texted Francesco, who I just met for coffee, another local comedian. We meet for coffee. That should be its own. Well, actually, it shouldn't be. We don't need more straight white people making podcasts. But Coffees with Francesco happens every few weeks, and we talk about comedy a lot. We talk about relationships. And the first thing I texted after that date is Francesco, he's an actor. What the fuck? Why am I attracted to actors? But it was interesting because I ended up telling him I was a stand-up, which I didn't mean to tell him. And I think that's when he wanted to end the date. Pretty quick.
You both despise each other's career.
Exactly. Yeah. We were looking for someone more stable. Because he told me he had studied computer science. And I was like, oh, great. And I was like, well, what are you freelancing? He's like, I'm an actor. I was like, fuck. He's like, oh, I heard you're in UX. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm also a stand-up. He's like, okay, let's take one more walk around the block and we're done. So it was really bad in both ways. And but it was funny because he told me that I don't know if I should have told him this or not, but I thought it was a worthy character building story. I told him I did a very big gig a couple months ago, and I bombed. I totally bombed, like a really big gig, and I'd been doing fairly well, which is probably one reason I got the gig. And it was one of those moments where it's like, if I didn't have the resiliency that I had internally, you know, I thought it was kind of a funny story. So I told him that, and he looked at me like, oh my God, how do you deal with that? Like, I couldn't get up on stage and, you know, not know exactly what I'm doing and do poorly and live with myself. And I'm like, oh, we do that every fucking day. Like, you know, we have good gigs, we have bad gigs. Yeah, so I told him the story, and he was not impressed. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, if you have a mental health history and you have, he's like, how do you deal with that? I'm like, oh, well, I've been through way, 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 way worse. So for me, it's just one more notch on a bad week. And yeah, you develop resiliency, you keep going. And then, you know, here I am a month later, and gigs are going really well, you know, and then next month it might be bad again. But, you know, you keep going.
So, you last month is really the worst month to be isolated.
Yeah,
the Christmas season, New Year, and it's so dark.
Oh, yeah.
I contact you multiple times, and you were like, no, I'm going to be alone.
Yeah,
determined.
Yeah.
Period.
It was bad. Well, I was like sitting, I hope no one at work is listening, but I've been doing pretty all right at work, but there was a couple days where I would just like turn on, you know, Stephen Sondheim died recently, and so I would just like watch Stephen Sondheim musicals during the working hours and just try to feel okay. It was bad. But again, like I said, I was worried, and like, of course I got into the headspace of like, should I have canceled? Was it the right thing for the health of the community? Was it the wrong thing? Am I totally fucking up my career? Like, all of these like horrible thoughts that I still, you know, have. But yeah, I went to the spa, I went to the sauna with a friend of ours, Jules, who you know. That was really fun. So I connected with a few people one-on-one, and then I tried to online date, and that was it. It was really quiet and really lonely.
You talk about the anxiety. Is anxiety your main mental health issue?
Yeah, but well, not necessarily main. I would say PTSD, which is not to be confused with PTSD, but little c PTSD is probably the main thing, and anxiety is a major feature of it. And so, if I were to back up entirely, when I was 9, when I was a little kid, I got diagnosed with OCD, and that was my first diagnosis. But both OCD and anxiety, you know, when you start to do your mental health work, you peel back the layer of the onion. And so both of those things were symptoms of actual CPTSD.
What's that?
It's a complex PTSD, so it means that it's not necessarily like you had one traumatic event, but that you were around, you had a pretty constant level of like unsafety or neglect or unsafe situations. It's bad. I don't really know the full diagnosis, but for me it manifested as a lot of time when I was a little kid. I was put in unsafe situations. I never felt I didn't have secure attachment. And there was specific instances too, and even ones that happened later, like in my 20s, I had some traumatic instances. But it usually manifests because there's either several instances or like a long period of prolonged time where you felt unsafe and not cared for, basically. So that's it. It's a bit more chronic, and it kind of lasts with you. Like when you have PTSD, you have an instance, you can sometimes treat that and get over it. Maybe with like the rapid eye movement therapy or like some sort of short-term therapy. But CPTSD is pretty permanent, and so I have to manage anxiety, and then I have to work on the deeper stuff of the CPTSD so that it minimizes the effects, but it's always kind of there.
So with the CPTSD part, I don't know how deep you want to go there. Like, are you willing to share a little bit, like what exactly it is for you?
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about it, like how much I want to share. So definitely, you know, I won't go any deeper than I want to, but I feel comfortable talking about it. For me, it kind of, you know, I have this joke on stage that that I've been doing lately, either near the opening or the ending, where it's like, does anybody else have to work really hard to fight those voices in your head that tell you you're a worthless piece of crap? That's the setup, and honestly, that comes from a pretty true place. It's there's this deep sense of like not being worthy, and not being worthy of love, and maybe like a fear that you'll never be loved, and it is like a feeling where it's like, ironically, I oftentimes have self-confidence, I just don't have self-worth, and it took me a while to realize that.
When did you realize it?
I got diagnosed with CPTSD about 2015, and it was such a relief because I finally figured out like what was what it was, basically what the core was, because for years I was treated up and down with like anxiety and depression, and I was on medication from like age 9 to like 22, and then I just switched to marijuana because it was cooler. Marijuana and alcohol. In a brief period of time with cocaine. So I mean, those medications are a lot more fun, and people think you're cooler when you're on them. But sorry, where were we going? I got a little lost in my
2015 diagnosis.
Oh yeah, so 2015. I was drinking heavily at the time. I was really fucking up my life. I got it. Yeah, is this supposed to be funny at all? Because we're about to go into some heavy... Yeah, I crashed my car. Like, there's just a lot of shit going on. And so I finally found this therapist that I had to have help. Like, my aunt she, like, saved my life, basically. And she got in contact with someone who was supposed to be really good, who had a long history of working with people. And she was like, oh, yeah, you have CPTSD. And she gave me some information on it. I was like, oh, fuck, okay. Everything else that I've been doing, like all the anxiety, all the depression, all the drinking, that was just a symptom of the deeper issue. And finally, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And so we started therapy, and I still see her, and it's a long-term thing where I have to build a safe connection with someone, and I have to slowly open up to someone, because you're kind of relearning how to connect in a deep way.
And how they diagnose you?
I think that's a great question, because there is no like, I would imagine it's a cluster of symptoms if I were to like whip out like a book or anything, but definitely given my history, definitely given like the history of events from when I was young, and just how prolonged it is, and problems with relationships and stuff. So.
And you talk about attachment and security issue. Is it something you have been making progress?
Yeah. I actually, sounds so silly, but there's a podcast I really like called Just Deal With It by Tracy Crossley. And she's one of those snazzy women who like writes books who you're just like, I don't know if I should trust this. Is this pop psychology? But she's great. And she has an attachment podcast. I haven't listened to it recently, but there was like a quiz attached and you can't, this is horrible. I have a master's degree in psychology. You can't trust online quizzes, but I took a few attachment quizzes lately, and I have secure attachment for the most part now. So I've been working on it a lot. I have a vast capacity. I remember a friend of mine told me years ago, who was also an artist, where I was just feeling really horrible and bad and thinking like, why the hell don't I have a partner? Like, do I lack the capacity for intimacy? And she looks at me, she goes, Tera, you have a vast capacity for intimacy. And I think that's true. I think sometimes I'm just guarded. So I think I have the ability to have secure attachment now, but I would say it's probably in the past couple of years that I've developed it.
And before that, what's the symptoms like? Like when you say attachment issue?
Oh, I think it's just like not really being able to like show a lot of vulnerability. Not being hyper independent. I mean, that's the thing about some of the stuff, like, is that I didn't even know I had a problem. Like when I was young, I was one of those kids that was kind of perfectionist, high performing, always getting good grades, and like you don't even know you're fucked up. You think you're fine, and then all of a sudden everything starts to crumble, and your life starts falling apart, and you're like, well, why am I not maintaining longer relationships? And like, what do I do when shit hits the fan, and how do I reach out to people? And so your coping skills when shit goes bad are usually pretty piss poor, because you don't learn how to like lean on other people and give to other people in the same way that I guess we're supposed to be. You're not really learning how to be interdependent. You're just like hyper independent, and you can't live like that. I mean, some people live like that for many years. They become successful type A humans, but I mean, luckily my life crashed maybe because then I had to learn how to reach out for help. And yeah.
Did you have issue with like attachment? Like, did you have issues of making friends?
I've always had friends. I have some friends that are very long term. I'm very excited that a friend of mine, Allison's going to come visit me. We've been friends for over 15, 20 years. So I've always had friends. But then there are periods of I think it's more of like the internal feeling where it's like, even if you're around people, you feel deeply, deeply lonely because you're not really sharing the core of what you're feeling. Or I guess when I was younger too, I would get boyfriends when I was like 21, and then when we started getting close, I would break up with them. So that was a thing too. But I think that the thing is not that I didn't have like social friends. It's that I didn't really share my deepest feelings with people, because it's kind of scary to share fucked up. It's like there's a certain type of person who understands some of the dark feelings you have when you've had a traumatic past, and other people are like, probably don't want to hang with that, or at least you assume it is like, whereas like certain friends of mine, I could, yeah, I don't know. So it's a fine line because it's not always appropriate to share everything, but it's more of like the internal feeling of feeling completely alone and unlovable rather than making friends,
Now doing comedy is the best place, right? We're all very fucked up, so.
Yeah.
And I remember that you were a trained therapist.
Yeah, that's the other fucked up part too. I was like, well, I got, I trained, I was helping people. I mean, you can be very, very good to other people, and you can hold space for other people, and you can do good work, and you can use your heart and use your empathy while inside treating yourself like shit, like you can. And for a while too, I was a yoga teacher, so I would be holding space in these rooms for people and doing I'd mentor people, and then at home I would just go home and drink a fucking box of wine and treat myself like shit on the inside, just with my thoughts, just with and not all the time. There were times where I had fun, but yeah, it's a weird thing that you can hold space for other people and yet treat yourself kind of crappy. And it's something I still struggle with, just like the cycle of negative thoughts that creep up from time to time.
When the negative thoughts come up, or normally what do you do?
Sorry?
When the negative thoughts start to emerge, what's your reaction?
I usually stoke the fire and just keep replaying them over and over. No, sometimes I talk to people. Sometimes I just like ask for an advice on a situation. Sometimes I just distract myself, by like listening to music, or I'll go to the gym. But it's funny because other people see the situation so differently. Like I called my aunt, we talk like about once a week, and I told her some disappointments about some shows I had lately. But what she heard was a lot of positive things actually. And when I looked at it through her eyes, I was like, oh yeah, I did. Wow. Yeah, I actually did that, And I was only focusing on the negative aspects of it. Like, oh, we didn't get as many people as we thought, or oh, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, but she's like, yeah, but you did 20 extra minutes, and you did all the stuff. And so it's amazing when you try to see the positive. Like, I really admire people that can see the positive of any situation. I think most comedians, I was talking to one last night where he had a great set, and I was like, dude, great set. And he's like, yeah, but I fucked up the ending, and that's all I can think about it. It's like, that's kind of how my whole life is sometimes. Where it's like, everyone else from the outside's like, wow, Tera, you worked really hard. You came to Germany. You finally have a job. You have a flat. And I'm like, yeah, but, I'm fighting with my landlords and, all this other. So I only tend to focus on the negative stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. I exercise a lot. I do comedy gigs a lot. I try to stay very, very busy. And then I'm slowly learning how to be more gentle with myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part that's harder, because doing the active things, and people will manage anxiety for years by just doing more things. That's why eating healthy or exercising or joining the book club or all these other like fucking American Western, you know, do things. They don't actually work long term. Like you actually have to sit with yourself and be really gentle, and that's what I work on in therapy too. And it's kind of spooky because like sometimes you have to visualize like your younger self and talking to your younger self, and that's not comfortable.
Mm.
But
I see so many resemblance of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like for many years, like I had a sort of attachment issue. Like even my Chloe's friends, they don't know who I really am.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel this sense of shame, so there's always a distance between me and people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was also coping with my anxiety by doing tons of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I also always have this negative voice in my mind, like, oh, you're a piece of shit, this is bad, this is bad. But now I'm learning to like to talk more positive with myself and to see the bright side. Like instead of saying, oh, I fuck up at this, I try to say, okay, if I don't do anything, this thing wouldn't happen. And now I did something, this thing happened. It's a success.
Exactly. Like reframing it from like, oh, I fucked that part up to like saying, I am learning and I am moving forward. And it's normal. It's normal to like do things and to not do them perfectly. That's 100% normal.
Have you read the book The Artist's Way?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I think it's like it's a book about the creativity, but I think it's also very relevant to the mental health of an artist.
Cool.
How to cope with your negative voice and reassure you that it's normal to feel down, it's normal to feel not productive, and it's normal that you want to relax. Instead of beating yourself down, you need to realize that your inner artist is a child, and a child works the best when they are happy, when they are playing, when they are having fun. When you force this artist to like follow the schedule and to work on a tight schedule, it's counterproductive, and you. Instead of beating yourself down, oh, why are you not working more? You should say, okay, my inner artist needs the space, needs the time, needs the realization, needs let her to enjoy this.
You need to feel comforted. You need to feel safe. Like there are many years I wasn't making art because I just needed the security of, say, like a home or a job, and I had to prioritize that. And 100%. To give yourself that time to feel comforted, to rejuvenate.
I think it's a very good book. It really helped me to dealing with my inner voice, because now, like when for example, I have very tight schedules, and last Thursday, like I was really busy, and I promised to do a mic that night. And the whole day I'm thinking about, I really wish I didn't sign up with this mic, and now my day is so broken, like I cannot get things done. And then in the evening, before I go to the mic, I twist my ankle. I twisted my ankle, and I was screaming on the street. And the moment when I fell down, the first thought coming in my mind was, great, now I can cancel the mic.
Unless I'm physically hurt, I can't cancel.
And this made me realize, okay, I really need rest. So instead of go home to finish my work that night, I just smoke some weed, watch TV.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's okay to choose yourself first. We do not do that. A lot of us that have that history.
And also in the book, it has a concept called artist date. Basically, it's like once a week, you need to take your inner artist to a date, to treat them, to nourish them, and it's really a long time with you and your artist to spend quality time together. And I have to say I'm not the best doing it, because time passed really fast, and before I realized I don't have any time left.
Yeah.
But when I do it, I do feel, really great ideas coming when I'm relaxing, when I'm not doing anything, when I'm just enjoying the moment.
Where do you do that? Where do you relax or enjoy the moment?
Like it suggests you to do different things every time. Like you can choose very different things for yourself. Maybe like spend a night just reading, or like go to a museum, or take a bath, or go to see a movie, go to see a concert. Only you and yourself.
Something fun just for you.
Yeah.
It took me many years to do that, but I've gotten a lot better at like doing nice things like that. For me, it's like going out in nature and just like really just enjoying like the trees and the beauty. Or I used to love to go to the roller skating garden in Minnesota. I just love, they would play like funk music, and they would have cool lights, and I would just love just like roller skating. And I would feel just like a little kid. It would be so fun and so nice. And so prioritizing those fun things.
I think this book is kind of like I'm like an authoritarian parent. Like it really, I see myself so much similar to my own family, like always beating myself down, always say, why are you not doing more, why are you not doing more? And now I feel like after reading this book, the inner child, the inner artist of me has some argument, can fight back of the parent side of me. Like when the parent side of me like beating myself down, saying I'm not doing good enough, the child side of me would tell myself, you see, the book said if you want to be a good artist, you need to relax, and it's important, and it's a little break to make you go longer distance. And I think the two forces are like always battling, but now I read a book called Atomic Habits. So it says in order to achieve your goals, it's really about minimize the inner battles you need to go through, and to all those conflicts, persuade yourself and negotiate yourself. It's just really a waste of energy and mental capacity. So after knowing that, instead of like battling for very long and finally give up, say, okay, I take a rest, and now I just realize, okay, if I spend 1 hour, if I realize when I'm doing stuff, my background is battling and is making decisions and deciding, I would notice it and realize, okay, this doesn't worth it. Just choose to make the easier option, instead of saying, should I treat myself a nice dinner tonight, and battling for 2 hours in my background, and just immediately say, okay, it doesn't worth it. All the money I would have saved is way wasted by wasting my energy. So I'm like, okay, add that on it. I should directly make a decision of, okay, I have a nice dinner, end of question, move on.
Right. I went to this weird hippie art college in California, and I had this teacher who, one of our core classes we had to take was, I think called centering practices. So it would be all these different mind-body practices. And I remember her saying, ironically, if you take an hour of time, you gain more time, and I was like, at the time, I didn't understand it at all. But I think it's exactly what you're saying. Like, if you take time out for yourself and do something nourishing, you're actually going to put yourself in a state to be more productive. And so it's actually necessary. You actually have to do that.
And my a very good author, Johan Hari, he wrote like 3 books so far. The first book called Chasing the Scream. It's about a book about addiction and drug history. The second book is called Lost Connections. This is the book helped the most about my mental health. He identifies like the reason why our society become less happy, more anxious, overall is because all kinds of connection are lost, like lost connection with your body, meaningful work, a spiritual life, and this kind of with nature. and it helped me so much. For example, I remember last year, no, 2020, December, I did a podcast with Dima, watermelon juice, a podcast. I already forgot about it, and a few days ago, I had an interview, and the journalist said, "Oh, how are you doing? Like you said in the podcast that you really have trouble making friends, like feeling very isolated within comedians." And I realized, wow, yeah, that was how I felt. Like the first 2 years doing comedy, I felt like everyone hates me, like I am like very isolated, like I have social anxiety, I don't know how to.
Which is funny because the first time I saw you, I was like, wow, this person's amazing. I'd like to get to know her, and I love her comedy. But it just goes to show you how different the outside is.
Yeah. And through listening this book, I realized, oh, okay, I need to have a community, and I realized that all the like negative feelings I have, like people hate me, is actually my own feelings of myself I project on others.
Yep.
So that since last year I started to do lots of community work within our community, and
you've been killing it on that regard. It's been so fun to see just like how many people you've brought together and how impactful your work has been. It's been truly, truly cool.
Cool. Thank you for this. And I feel like I am able to break some like a glass how do you say ceilings I had with others, with myself, and lots of my work has been inspired by this book. And he had a new book just a few days ago called Stolen Focus. It says like why people are less capable of focus on things.
Yeah.
And in this book, he introduced a few types of focus. One is spotlight focus. It's what normally we call focus about. Like we concentrate sitting in front of computer doing our task.
Yeah.
But there's other types of focus very important too. Like for example, not doing anything, just wandering around and wasting time.
Yeah.
That's actually, it's a very important type of focus. So you don't lose your sense of yourself and your life goal while doing the task at hand.
Right. I don't think you can be creative if you're constantly go.
Yeah.
So like while I sometimes still feel like I'm not as social as I would like to be, I do have a lot of time to like write and to process comedy, because when I'm not working, I give myself that time to chill. Yeah.
As an artist, I think the really need to overcome that the productivity trap. Like productivity is not a linear progress. Like it just come out of nowhere one day, and you need to treat yourself nice when it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and give yourself context too. It's like, well, I've been really slammed at work, or I've been dealing with mental health stuff, or whatever it is. There's sometimes reasons why you're not productive, and then there's seasons of like, I mean, I love like when jokes come when you're for me, it's like when I'm walking, like when I'm on a walk, because my body's moving, that's when the ideas start to churn. And so making time, for me, I think a lot of it, the first you talked about in the book that he talks about different connections, like to nature and to your body. I think the body connection was the first thing, even before I could really get in touch with my deeper feelings, was the body stuff. And I know now when I walk, my ideas just start to flow, and that's when creativity is fun, is when they just like flow from you without having to try. Like, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to anyway, I guess. Some people are like, you have to wake up at 9 a.m. and write for 2 hours a day, and I'm like, I just kind of like to go in these organic cycles. But I'm writing often, but usually it comes for me from like that physical stimulation, and then again there are waves where I'm writing a lot more, and then there's waves where I like taking a month off, and then now I'm going out a lot.
Yeah, take a break is it's good, it's productive. And about your anxiety, are you taking any medication now?
No. So from what I know about certain forms of, I was never on any anti-anxiety medication, honestly, even though it manifested more as anxiety. I was on a very mild dose of antidepressants for a big period of my life. But because it was such a mild dose, the research has suggested in some cases that exercise works like a mild antidepressant. And that's not me being anti-medication at all, especially for a major depression. Sometimes people just need it and they need it their whole life. But for me, it was just, I found if I exercise regularly, that sort of mitigates at least the biochemical stuff. But you have to make yourself do it, which can be hard if you're depressed or anxious. But, luckily I'm pretty good about making myself exercise, and that usually kind of balances things out for me.
Yeah, exercise is one of the best antidepressants.
Yeah. Yep. Uh-huh. And then I just, I cut out alcohol. I still drink way too much coffee, but that's one thing I'm not willing to give up at this time.
And you talk about your substance consumption.
Yeah.
What's your relationship now with substance?
I just don't do anything. I just don't really do substances anymore other than like caffeine. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be forever, but it's just what I need now. Like it's hard enough to, just kind of hang out with yourself. So I don't know. That's just what I decided kind of worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It reminded me of, do you know the comedian Aparna Nancharla?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's amazing. She's an Indian American comedian out of New York, and she talks about her anxiety, and she's like, I don't remember exactly the setup and the premise, but she talks about drinking coffee like, why not consume another cup of Tera? Because coffee only makes her anxiety worse. So yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much all I do. I tried to microdose on mushrooms this year. I really did. I was like, I want to be cool too.
This year, you mean the past 15 days?
Sorry?
You mean you start to microdose mushroom this year? You mean 2021?
Oh, no. Like, yeah, sorry. The beginning of the comedy season, I bought a few mushrooms, and then I think my friend I was like, well, I don't want to get too crazy. So he's like, just take a few. So I took a couple, and then I went to bed and took a nap.
That's not microdose. Microdose means you need to grind it into powder form, and every 3 days you take like a 0.1 gram.
Okay, well, I need your
help.
That's
microdose.
I need you to put. You guys can't see this because this is a podcast, but Moni made me this delicious red beet smoothie, and it's so good.
And the name is pink period.
Excellent. I'm about to get my pink period, so I think this is gonna help. I need you to grind up some mushrooms and put it in my smoothie because I really want to microdose. I don't know if it did anything. I do know that week I cried, and I was like, maybe it opened up something in me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not against it. I haven't found the opportunity anymore. Like I said, I used to smoke a lot of weed, but I wasn't ever addicted to weed, It was just something that I did regularly. And then at one point, it just started to make me kind of paranoid, so I stopped. But yeah, and I'm not anti-drug, by the way, just for all you listeners out there. I think all things work for different people, and I have no qualms with it. I just know for me, this is what works for now.
And when and how did you start comedy?
When and how did I start comedy?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been doing performance art for the longest time, and that included writing my own material. And the stuff that I used to write, I have a training in theater, and then I started doing, spoken word, and I wrote like a one-woman show, and it started to become more and more funny, just kind of as a coping mechanism. And then I was like, well, why not actually try stand-up? And they had this mic in Minneapolis called, oh no, I'm blanking the name. This is really bad. It's a very cool mic. It was at Cafe du Nord. Oh, this is bad. I want to plug their mic for them. Anyway, I'll think of it. It was in Minneapolis, and I was very, very nervous, and it was very quiet. And I think I actually made a mental health joke, like one of the first two sets. For some reason, no one was in the first two rows. And then there was just a few speckled people in like row 4. And I was like, oh, well, I have CPTSD. So this is, so when the room's half gone, I feel normal or I feel okay. Which is not a great joke, but
when was it?
When was it? It was right before I moved to Berlin. So it was probably 2019, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So sometime around then is when I started comedy, but I wasn't doing it regularly. I did it like once a week-ish, once every other week. But when I moved to Berlin is when I really started doing it a lot. It was funny because they gave me, I've told this story before, they gave me like a prime slot at one of their events because I had had a strong performance history. You know, there'd been press about my shows, but I didn't know what the fuck I was doing as a stand-up. And so I did this really long set that was more like a story, and it was not funny at all. And it just kept going on and on. And I wouldn't say it wasn't interesting, but it definitely wasn't stand-up. I had these bath caps because I was like telling the story about going to the Hungarian bathhouse and forgetting my bath cap, and I gave them to the audience. It was just weird, dude. It was such a weird show. But they were sweet and wonderful. So it was only, and then I started to move to Berlin. I started doing more jokes. And again, I didn't really understand joke structure at the time, but I just kept doing it. And people were nice enough to be supportive and give me spots. And I took a class eventually. I took like a beginning, like writing stand-up class. That really helped.
Did you take it with Caroline?
No, I took it with this guy out of LA named Carrie Oates. I'd like to take Caroline's class. I think that would be really good. She does like 3 levels, right? Like,
I think now I think it's only the beginner level, and then there are some like small workshops on top of that.
I just consumed a bunch of stuff. You know, I've read some books, especially over lockdown. That's one thing I did is I read a couple different comedy books, and that was really good. But once I started, I was doing, 5, 8. I remember when I didn't have a job, I would do like 13 shows a week sometimes. I'm not that crazy anymore, especially while working full time. But and you learn from just listening, watching, paying attention, what's happening in the room.
And how was it? What made you think you want to do comedy more?
I think it just started. Again, it was kind of like a coping skill to how shit the world was becoming, or at least that was my opinion of it at the time, around like 2016, when there was all this just political shit and like a lot of fucking trauma in our city and in our countries and in our world, and I was just trying to process with it. I was like, comedy seems like the best way to do it. So I started off with this, what was probably pretty annoying sort of political bent, which I'm not of that bent anymore when I'm doing my comedy. I think people just need to laugh about everything, all kinds of things, and you need to push sometimes. But yeah, it was just like a coping skill to try to like deal with fucking life at the time. And there was just an ample abundance of opportunity to get on stage, which I loved. And there was just readily available. Mm-hmm. It was a big scene, so because I was doing contemporary stuff before, and that's such a niche scene.
And how do you see yourself in comedy? Is it something you think you want to go professionally eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the dream, right? I don't know how to get there, though. I hadn't really thought that far ahead. Like, the past couple years has mostly been about improving my craft and constantly chipping away at new performance goals. And so that's been the focus up until now. And then, of course, I produce now, so that's been a learning curve. There's a lot more stage time. There's a lot more paying attention to the whole of the show in the room that you have to learn how to do. So I hadn't thought about, like, next steps. I mean, I think the next step for me is starting to produce shows where I'm doing 15, 20 on the regular, along with a few other people, because as you know, the spots for curated shows are usually 7 to 10, even for the curated ones. So I think that's the next step for me, is doing longer sets. I'd like to, eventually get an hour, but I think I want to really get a solid 20, 30 this year. And I'd like to tour at some point. I have a full-time job, so I can work remote, but with Corona and everything, haven't even thought about that yet. Yeah, what about you?
Me, I'm going professional this year. Let's see how far I can go.
Nice.
Last year I made the biggest jump. Like I finally put up my solo show.
Nice.
Which
is happening, by the way, listeners, on January 28th. Child from Wuhan. See, there you go.
You'll be hosting.
I'll be hosting. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it.
Me too.
You've done it a few times though,
Yeah,
haven't you?
but every time I do it, there's like a huge change on the script. Like every time I polish it, I improve it, and
Right.
every time I impress myself, like
Yeah.
because like I did it twice.
Yeah.
Both the two times. The first time it was like Omicron just came to Germany, and I have the whole ticket, the whole show sold out.
Yeah.
And it was paid ticket, and I was thinking, how about I just cancel it? Then I don't need to do it anymore. And then
little self-sabotage.
yeah, and eventually it happened. I was really happy, and like 10 minutes before the stage time, I was like, I don't think it's happening. I don't think it's happening. I was so anxious.
Oh, wow.
And then I powered through. Afterwards, it felt amazing. And the second time, I'm like, I changed the script so much, so I locked myself up for a week to just to polish the material, but I spent too much time to polish the material and didn't have enough time to memorize it. And the same day, I'm like, there's no way I can memorize the script. I'm like, really, there's no way I can do this.
You got to get it in your body too. That's the part of doing these mics, is that you got to get it in your body.
Yeah, and I was like so nervous, and that was the last work plan I had for 2020, and I'm like, okay, after this show, holiday will start. And that day I woke up, I was talking with my partner. I'm like, I really cannot imagine I can survive tonight. It just looks so tough. And then I was so anxious, but of course it happened, and it was really good. It was also a sold out show. Everyone really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards I was shaking, and I realized that's how creative process look like. You never know you will do it until you actually did it.
Yeah. I'm just I admire you so much, like, because I've seen how much work you've put in, and I mean, you were one of the first comedians I saw you when I first moved to Berlin, and you're already really good. Like, I saw you at Chuckleheads, and I remember even then you like gave me a sticker or something. You're like, come to this show. Like, you were really pushing it. But to know how much work that must have been to put on the show, and then to revise the show and have all the anxiety about it, but like still do it anyway, and doing it even though you're like not quite ready with the memorization, like that is the process, right?
I think there's a book really helped me. I actually didn't finish reading the book, but with the part I read it, it's called this book is called Playing Big by Tera. She is a career coach for women, and she talk about how, like, why telling women to be confident is a trap, because she made lots of examples, like the best like a female painter, the best female like a singer or opera singer. If you interview them, like, they are the best in history, but if you interview them, they say, oh, every time before I go on stage I puke.
Right.
And the point is not to be confident, because if you have this mindset, you will never feel you are ready for what you are doing. The point is to realize, like, for great artists, they never be confident, and it's okay, and you just keep doing it, and
you gotta like sit with the feeling, like inside of your body. I think that's what true mastery is. Not like a lot of people like fake it till you make it, and it's like, you can elbow your way into a performance, but if the audience is savvy, they're not going to be on board with that. They're not going to let you get away with that. And B, it's like you're going to have a much better time if you're actually able to sit with the emotions floating through your body. I don't remember who said this, but I'm sure it's been said many times. Whereas reframing your anxiety or your nervousness before you go on stage as excitement, because they physiologically feel pretty similar. It's just, and again, it's like not checking out and disappearing. You know, sometimes when you're really nervous, you kind of go away from your body, which happens, and hopefully at that point you have enough rote memorization of your familiar jokes that you can survive a few moments of that. But when you're really able to, like, sit with all that shit and go anyway, oh man, even when I was first doing mics, I would just pace around the building, and I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they don't know how impactful this mic was and how sweet they were to me. But I would be so nervous, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't even go. And I'd been a performer for years at that point, but it was a new thing. It was stand-up, and it was scary. And yeah, I think a lot of comedians listening will know this. If you don't have some energy, whether you call it anxiety or excitement, and sometimes your performance isn't that great. So
yeah, that's exactly like that. And also like to realize that every time you feel anxious, you feel you are not good, you are a piece of shit, and then it turns out great. And then at some point you really need to start to realize what you feel, what you believe at this moment is not true.
Right, because one thing's body sensation, the other is the message or the meaning behind it. And that second thing can oftentimes be bullshit.
Yeah. And that's what I was telling myself before my solo shows. I'm like, I produced the Berlin Mental Health Festival myself alone,
which was an amazing success.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. And this is really an experience make me really made progress with my own perfectionism. I never thought I have the issue, but then through doing it I realized, I really have an issue. I want everything the best. And then when I was really anxious, I journal almost every day at that time. And I started to realize, hey, wait a moment, I put this festival together. Without me, it will not happen. And whatever happens, it's a success.
Right.
Then why I'm like worried about, maybe the sound is not perfect, recording is not perfect. Even the recording totally fair, it's still a success.
Yeah.
And I just need to realize that. And before the mental health festival, I never produced anything this size. And before that, I think I only produced like one show 2020. So to put a whole festival together, it was really challenging. I like a few days before it, I still feel I'm not ready, and there are so many things not mapping out, and I was recovering from a breakup also. And at one point I just realized, okay, just chill out, see what will happen. And then I just observed it, and everything happened perfectly, magically. And then when I was doing my solo show, I'm like, remember the mental health festival, you thought you cannot do it, but it's a success. And there are so many things I believed I cannot do it, but it turns out that I can do it.
Yeah, you start to build that repository of like, look at these past examples.
Yeah.
You know, and the whole holding yourself back, I think, is a big issue. Like, I'm not going to do it unless it's perfect is a great way to not do anything.
Yeah.
But when you say, hey, I'm going to do it, and no matter what, it's going to be fine. And there's going to be, again, it's that more balanced thinking of like, there's going to be good parts and bad parts, but I'm doing it. And that's the cool thing.
In artist way, they call it feeling the form. It's like you as an artist, your job is to just put the work in and not worry about the quality at all. You just put the quantity in, and the quality is taken care by a higher force.
Oh God, yeah.
And
that's cool.
So by thinking like this, you just realize, okay, like you shouldn't be judgmental to yourself. And also they talk about in order, perfectionism is the worst enemy of an artist. Because in order to be creative, you have to do it a lot. And also sometimes even having a bad piece of art is a necessary process to reach to a good piece of art. Without no one would produce amazing piece of art from the first go.
There was I don't remember, one artist mentor of mine told me, like, what's the difference between like a master sculptor or a master potter and an average potter, it's like, well, one of them produced, you know, X number of masterpieces, but the other one had way more failings, but they just produced more pots. They just kept producing. I'm gonna butcher that, but but you get the point, right? Like, this person produced way more crap, but also way more awesome stuff because they just kept going, and not having that sense of creativity. Like, just to bring it back to stand-up, you can have a set that you know is good and your jokes are great, but you can strangle that by trying to perform it in a way that's perfect. Like, you can have like your quote-unquote good set go poorly if you're strangling the creativity, which I've done. Like, you have to be free to be in the moment and to let things evolve and to find inspiration with, you know, who's in the room and what's inspiring you that day. Yeah, you absolutely have to have that. And you have to have those crap sets in order to either redo or analyze what went wrong in the performance thing, whether it's the writing or something else.
Yeah, exactly. By knowing, like, this is objectively how creative process work, then you feel more forgiving for yourself.
Yeah. And hearing that from other people too. That's what really helps, is like seeing comedians that I know are amazing do poorly, as much as I don't like to see that. It's like, it's affirming because you know they're good. They just had a rough performance, and then you do the same and you're like, oh, that's a part of the game. You know? Yeah, that's 100% a part of it. The difference is that, yeah, people kept going.
Yeah, you need to keep doing it in order to be great.
Yeah.
If you feel, oh, I'm a piece of shit, my art is crap, and you stop, then your art will stay crappy.
Yeah.
It will never be great.
It's the messaging, and that's the whole frickin' reframe. It's like, you can. I think the messaging is a way of trying to control the feeling, right? Because like, when people, like, from what I'm hearing, you or me feel bad, we feel like it's personal shame, like I'm a piece of shit, not I had a bad gig. It's that I'm a piece of shit, and the message isn't true. Like, what's truth is that you had a weird gig because of, I don't know, what happened right before you got on stage, or who was in the room, or that joke just needs to be rewritten. It's probably something like that. But we take it as like, I'm a piece of shit and I should stop comedy forever. It's like, that's not, the message is the liar. The feelings, you know, it's an attempt to control this feeling of shame, whereas, you know, maybe disappointment would be a softer version of the shame, and to be able to deal with that feeling and like let it move through your body and let it pass. And as I build my body capacity to experience more feelings, like, I had to relearn how to experience desire. I had to re-experience like joy. I had to learn how to re-experience all the positive emotions, because I think in my early 20s I'd been suppressing both the negative and the positive to some extent. I was numbing them out. Yeah, so as you build your body capacity, I think you're gonna build your capacity for better, more alive performances too. Yeah.
Cool. And how do you evaluate your current mental health?
I try not to. No. I don't know. It's always just an adjustment, right? Because like what you were saying, sometimes there are cycles where you need to be gentle and sweet and kind and not do much. For me, it's like I had that month, and so I did things a little differently. I tried to connect more with friends, and then I realized actually I have to go out and do comedy, like I have to. And now I'm doing that, and maybe at some point I'll be like, Tera, you have to rest, you're doing too much. So it's always like, you know, it's always a balancing act. I say for me, if I'm exercising a few days a week, that's kind of baseline for my mental health. And then talking to someone that I know really well, at least like once a week, every 2 weeks, like someone like my aunt or one of my closest friends. But yeah, I mean, you know, some days like on the inside are better than others, but I don't know if I can really totally control that. It's a constant working.
Do you journal?
No, but you and every single one of my therapists has always told me I ought to.
Like, I really, really highly recommend you to read the book The Artist's Way. I think every creative person needs to read it. And it's kind of like every chapter, it talks one aspect of creative process, and it's kind of like life coach, like saying positive things for you, and then they have some exercise.
Yeah.
And the main message of the book is to teach you to start the habit of writing journal every morning. And I never thought myself a journaling person, but I've been doing it almost every day for almost 1 year now.
Is it to help you realize like where you're at and where your inner is, or is it to help you also develop counter messages to the negative ones? Or
it's just the journaling piece message inside is called morning pages. It's journaling, but it's a little bit different. Basically, it's just you wake up, you just sit down and write 3 pages of stuff, like a stream of conscious. So whatever comes to your mind, you just write, and
that's cool.
don't worry about the outcome, and you don't need to read the page at all.
That's
and
cool.
It's kind of like a consolidate all the voice like floating in your mind, and for example, if in your mind there's this voice say you are a piece of shit, you are a piece of shit, but your mind kind of like play like outly just repeat it. But when you write it down, you can write, okay, I'm a piece of shit, and then you are going to write why I'm a piece of shit, and then you start reasoning, and after the reasoning, you can write, oh, I think the reasoning is not really solid, and you can make other counterpoint, and afterwards, your mind is more at ease.
We did a really cool thing in art school for our writing class where we had to do stream of consciousness writing. I think it was maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes at a time every single day. I was smoking a lot of weed at the time. And some really interesting characters came out. I think that was even before I started doing comedy, these weird, because it came off really like absurdist and abstract. Like it wasn't normal thinking, like it wasn't even like negative thoughts or daily thoughts. It just came out as like almost like Samuel Beckett. Like, so that's kind of a gross reference, but it was just really abstract and weird.
that sounds a golden mine for comedy.
It was weird. Like it turned into these. So we would sometimes take like little snippets from these stream of consciousness writings that we would do. I think we had to do it every day for like 2 weeks or like a month or something. And I would take these little snippets that looked like weird abstract poetry, and we'd turn them into performance art. So it was a trip, you know, because there's many different voices inside of us, a lot of different personalities, you know, not in like a split personality sort of way, but you know, we have a lot of I don't know. I think there's something there involving creativity and getting to know your insides through that process.
I really highly recommend it. You feel so clear afterwards, and now I don't have time to do it daily. I do it 3 times a week. I do feel if I don't do it more than, let's say, 3 days, I feel like I really need it.
And so does that, what do you look back at it, or do you just use it as like a way to like cleanse your stuff out?
I normally don't look at it at all.
Okay.
It's just the process of dump all the stuff on paper, and you also feel more clear. Also, you plan about the future.
Right.
Maybe sometimes just a small idea come, and I write it down and I elaborate, and then it become a more solid idea. The next time I think more about it, and then it slowly become a plan.
Oh, cool. You mean like a creative plan?
Like anything, like creative about my comedy, or about my life, or about my relationship with others. It's just lots of seeds. Like maybe it's just some very small things in my mind. I never give time and space for it. But if I write it down, then I elaborate. And when I elaborate, I think about it more, and it slowly coming into shapes.
Did you ever make any pretty big discoveries, like where you're like, oh, I didn't realize this was going on inside?
Yeah, for example, the realize like the fact that I think everyone hates me is my own projection on others. And also I have this breakup, we are in a committed relationship for 3.5 years, and he wanted to break up with me. And then we decide, okay, let's take a break inside the breakup. And every day I've been writing, and then after 2 weeks, one day, like slowly on the paper, I realized my tongue of voice start to change. And one day I just finally realized, okay, I don't want to be in this relationship, and I decided to break up. So like it's really a great tool.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe maybe I'll write that down.
Yeah, I will write you the name of book. Like these two books, like The Artist's Way and the War of Art. Those are two like most classic books for creative people.
I know I've always heard of The Artist's Way, but like I said, I've never read it, and I haven't gotten into that practice. But man, I think that would just be a good way to like get the shit out. Again, I always think just to that hyper productivity that if you're doing something like journaling, you're supposed to use it. But I didn't even think about just using it as a way to like dump shit out, like basically taking a verbal dump.
It's like a more active way of meditating.
Right. Which is better because you're physically doing something. Meditating can be hard for people with anxiety. And while I don't experience a ton of anxiety right now, I mean, it shows up with active thoughts sometimes. But I mean, yeah, it's easier to do, I would say.
Cool. I really highly recommend it, and feel free to discuss with me after you read it. Yeah, like get the book, and every week they have like a chapter, and there are some questions you write about it, and it's really good. So cool. My last question. What's your favorite comedy special?
Oh, I don't know if I have a favorite comedy special.
The three.
I mean, I just watched Rosebud Baker's. I thought that was really great. I actually really liked Leslie Jones' Time Machine. I thought that was freaking phenomenal. What else have I watched recently? I've watched a lot of like shorter sets. I don't know. That's the only. Those are the ones that like come to mind right now. But I'll think of a million ones afterwards.
The first one. What's the name?
I just watched over Christmas. I watched Rosebud Baker.
Where can I watch it?
Comedy Central.
Okay, I'm trying to hack a way to watch it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. I think that's it. Our first episode of It's Mental podcast of 2022. It will be an exciting year for comedy and everything.
Yeah.
I hope our life will finally be normal.
It's always evolving, but you know what? We're keeping going, keeping doing it. To your words, you do it.
So, guys, if you're listening, like on 28th of January, I'm doing my solo show at Space Medusa. Not Space Medusa, the War Comedy Club.
We love both clubs, by the way.
Yeah, Tera will be hosting for me. There's still ticket available. Go get it.
On Eventbrite?
Yes.
Child from Wuhan on Eventbrite.
Yeah. You can get the ticket at www.moonijang.com. And on 27th of February, it's a Sunday. I produce this showcase, part of Berlin Mental Health Festival. This month, our focus is anxiety. The show is called What the Heck is Anxiety? So I am going to invite a bunch of Berlin-based artists to all focus on explaining to us and to our loved ones what exactly anxiety is and why it's a very bad idea to just to tell us to relax when we're anxious. We really tried.
Yeah. That's cute. Yeah.
So Tera will be also on that show. And check it out. You also can find the ticket at my website. And besides that, finally, I have my Patreon page. So if you like the podcast, go to my website and donate me like a €3.50 a month so I can get a falafel.
Woo!
Yeah, be my falafel sponsor. Cool. Do you have anything to plug in?
If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at Tera Kilbride Comedy. It's Kilbride with one L because I'm not that violent. And then I also have a Facebook page called Tera Kilbride Comedy as well. And you can find out all the shows that I'm doing around town and or producing via those channels.
Cool. So happy New Year, guys, and I'm happy you all survived another year, and let's keep it going. Bye bye.
Bye.